This happened about a year ago. I was 32 and working the night shift as a nursing assistant at the hospital. I didn't have much experience, but I was trying my best. I was also taking care of my grandmother, who was really sick. Most nights were quiet, just me and the weight of the empty hallways. But there were 3 experiences that still haunt me. On my second shift, I was on the 4th floor checking on patients. It was late, maybe around 2 a.m. The air felt thick, and the fluorescent lights were flickering. I checked my watch, wondering how much longer I had to go. As I walked past the supply room, I heard a faint knocking sound. It was soft at first, but it grew louder as I got closer. I felt a chill creep up my spine, but I brushed it off. Maybe it was just the old building settling, right? I shook my head and carried on, convincing myself that I was just tired. By the end of the week, things got stranger. One night I was doing my rounds. I noticed a door open by itself right in front of me. I jumped back, my heart racing. I looked down the empty hallway. There was no one there. The hospital felt heavier then, like it was holding its breath. I tried telling my coworkers, but they laughed it off. They said, "You just need to focus." Then there was Mr. Jenkins, the sweet old man in room 3B. One night, he looked at me and said he saw shadows moving in the corners of his room. I thought he was just confused or maybe a little delirious. But the way he stared at me, wide-eyed, made my skin crawl. I laughed, trying to ease the tension, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. I started hearing whispers late at night, too. I'd walk past empty rooms and I could swear I heard people talking. It wasn't my imagination. The voices were clear enough for me to stop and listen, but there was never anyone there. I often thought about whether I was just exhausted, or if the hospital hid something deeper. The tapping from the supply room still echoed in my head. It felt like I should have done more, looked deeper. What truly bothered me was that I never got any answers, and I still wonder what lurked in the shadows. One night I found myself standing in that dimly lit hallway. My heart raced as I heard the loud knocking again from the supply room. I took a deep breath and turned away, but it felt like something was pulling me back. I looked over my shoulder and the door was half open, just too wide. I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread. Was it just my mind playing tricks? Or was there something real and sinister hidden in those walls? The hospital had secrets, and I was left feeling like I had just scratched the surface. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't let it go. That night I stood frozen in the hallway, the supply room door gaping like a mouth ready to swallow me whole. I took a tentative step forward, driven by a mix of curiosity and fear. The knocking had stopped, replaced by an uneasy silence. I leaned in closer, peering into the dimness. At first I couldn't see anything, just shadows hugging the corners of the room. Then I felt it, an icy draft that made me shiver. It was unnatural, cutting through the warm air that usually filled the hospital. I took another step, my heart pounding in my ears. I hesitated. Maybe it was nothing, but those knocking sounds still echoed in my mind. As I took a third step, I heard a whisper, almost like a soft breath. It sent a chill down my spine. "Help me," it breathed out. I stumbled back, adrenaline rushing through my veins. Was I really hearing this? My pulse quickened. I wanted to run, but I felt rooted to the spot. Then I heard a faint shuffle behind me. I whipped around, heart racing. The hall was still empty. Dim lights flickered above, casting long, eerie shadows. I half expected to see someone there, but I was alone. "Just breathe," I muttered to myself, trying to calm down. I could still walk away, right? But before I could make a decision, I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye. My breath hitched. The medical cart by the wall had shifted slightly, as if someone had pushed it. Something was happening here, and I didn't understand it. My gut twisted tight. I took cautious steps toward the cart to see if I could find out what was going on. As I neared it, I noticed several of the supplies had fallen to the floor. Bandages, syringes, gloves scattered everywhere. Had someone been in here? I quickly glanced back at the supply room but didn't see anything out of the ordinary. My instinct screamed at me to stay away, but I felt the urge to follow this thread. I had to know what was behind all this. I collected my nerves and peered into the supply room once again. The dim light illuminated the shelves, and there it was, something glinting in the corner. Crouching down, I reached out for it. My fingers brushed against a small, shiny object. A pendant, maybe? As I picked it up, I felt an odd warmth radiate from it, contrasting the chill of the room. That wasn't all. The pendant had words engraved, but I couldn't quite make them out in the low light. My head spun. Was this connected to the whispers? To the knocking? Suddenly, the lights flickered again, almost to the point of going out. I glanced over my shoulder, unsure of what I might find. The air thickened, and I could feel it pressing down on me, as though the very hospital was alive, watching, waiting. In that moment, I decided to take the pendant to Mr. Jenkins. Maybe he could shed some light on this. I needed answers, needed to understand what was happening around me. But as I turned to leave, the door to the supply room slammed shut behind me with a force that made the windows rattle. I gasped, panic rising. I was trapped. Just then, the whispers started again, louder this time. "Help me," they seemed to call out, and I realized I was far from alone. My breath quickened as I stood in the dark supply room, the pendant clutched tightly in my hand. The whispers were relentless now, filling the air around me with a dire sense of urgency. "Help me." It was a plea that echoed off the walls, shaking the core of my being. I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping it would all stop, but it only grew louder, wrapping around me like a funeral shroud. Screams of panic clawed at my throat. I turned toward the door, my fists clenched, but there was no handle to pull. The door stood solid, an impenetrable barrier. I felt the walls closing in, and I knew I had to think fast. My mind raced through potential ways out, a window, a hatch, anything. Before I could formulate a plan, I darted towards the nearest shelf, hoping there was something I could use. My fingers brushed against the sterile packages of medical supplies. They felt foreign in my hands. "Stay calm," I whispered, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince. Just then, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. I stumbled, energy zapped from my limbs. I couldn't see, but I could feel the space around me shifting. There was a rustling noise, like something or someone was moving in response to my fear. The whispers halted suddenly, silencing the chaos. I held the pendant closer, its warmth a strange comfort. Maybe it held some kind of power. I focused on it, reading the faint engraving. "Remember me." The words were haunting, threading through my mind with a sickening clarity. I stumbled back against the wall, realizing that I needed to act fast. I had to find a way out. My fingers searched the wall for any hint of an escape. I felt the cold metal of a fire alarm on the next wall and pressed the button. It was a wild hope, but I needed to break through this claustrophobic nightmare. The shrill alarm pierced the silence, muffling the whispers that had been chasing me. I could hear the sound of sirens faintly in the distance, but would anyone arrive in time? The door still wouldn't budge. I could feel despair creeping in, a heavy weight on my chest. Just when I thought all was lost, I heard a beeping sound behind me. I turned suddenly, the darkness swallowing me whole. The air around me crackled with energy, and I could almost swear I saw a figure forming in the shadows. "Help me!" the voice suddenly screamed again, this time right next to me. I gasped and stumbled back, nearly losing my balance. The figure loomed closer, and with it came that icy draft once more. I could see a shape translucent and shimmering like fog under the flickering lights. Then everything went dark. The alarm ceased, silence imploding around me. I strained my ears to hear anything but the pounding of my heart. Panic consumed me, and I shouted for help, but there was only that oppressive quiet. And then, from the depths of it, came a whisper, clearer now. "Find me." The darkness clung tightly. I couldn't stay in this void for long. I felt my way along the wall, searching for any clue that might lead me to the door. My fingers grazed over a rough patch of plaster, the only sense of reality grounding me. I was losing my grip on sanity, teetering on the edge of panic. The whisper, "Find me," rippled through the stillness, and I fought against the urge to scream. With a deep breath, I scanned the shadowed corners of the room, hoping to glimpse something, anything that might help. My pulse quickened as I remembered the figure. Was it real or a figment of my imagination? I couldn't tell, but I needed to know. The pendant felt heavy in my palm, urging me forward. Then I noticed a faint light flickering near the floor on the opposite wall. It wasn't much, but it was enough to guide me. I navigated toward it, each step a combination of determination and dread. The air grew colder as I approached. As I got closer, I could see it was a small vent. The metallic grill warped with age. A voice unexpectedly broke through the silence again. "Help me." It was softer now, a gentle plea that tugged at my heart. I knelt down and squinted through the cracks, desperation clawing at my insides. Suddenly there was a loud thud from behind me, and I whirled around, the breath catching in my throat. A medical cart had rolled towards me from a shelf, its wheels squeaking against the floor. I couldn't help but wonder if it was just another trick of the night. The shadows danced along the walls, and I felt as if they were watching, waiting for the right moment to pounce. Keeping my back to the vent, I pushed the cart aside, hoping it would give me some space, some sense of security. My heart raced as I peered back towards the vent. "Please," I whispered. "Please, show me how to help you." Just as I was about to reach for the vent, the lights flickered back to life. Harsh fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead, illuminating the room and banishing the shadows that had felt so alive just moments before. I squinted against the brightness, feeling momentarily blinded, but I was also hit by a wave of relief. Caught between astonishment and fear, I froze when I noticed something move near the corner where the light barely reached. Out of the shadows, a small child appeared, staring directly at me. The face was a mask of fear and longing, but then, like a mirage, they vanished just as quickly. "Wait!" I called, panic flooding my veins. I launched forward, heart hammering, but there was nothing, just empty space where the child had been. Dread washed over me as I swung around the room again, suddenly feeling as if I wasn't alone. Then I heard it, a soft giggle echoing from behind the carts. I burned with curiosity and fear. What was happening? As I approached the sound, another whisper brushed against my ear. "Help me." The air turned icy, and I knew one thing for sure. I had to find out who, or what, was in the room with me. With a steadying breath, I turned the corner of the cart, ready to confront whatever awaited me. I didn't even consider the possibility of backing down. The urgency had taken hold, and that's when I saw it. A small, crumpled note lying on the ground, stained and torn, with one word that chilled me to the bone. "Run." I picked up the note, my hands trembling as the reality of its message sank in. Run. Why would someone want me to run? My eyes darted around the room, searching every shadow for movement. Time felt like it was standing still, suffocating me in the oppressive silence. Then I heard it again, the faint giggle. It was closer this time, teasing me. My instincts screamed to flee, yet my curiosity overpowered my fear. I couldn't let this slip away. I had to know who or what was behind it. I took a cautious step toward the sound, glancing over my shoulder to the vent I had just abandoned. The light flickered ominously, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the floor. But I pressed on, driven by a mix of adrenaline and dread. That's when I spotted movement. A small figure darted out from behind the medical carts, a blur of white and brown. My heart raced as I called out, hoping this was the child I'd seen earlier. "Hey, wait!" But all I heard in response was another giggle, high and bright, followed by a soft thud. Something felt wrong. The warmth of the lights around me felt like a false shield against the deepening gloom. I rushed to the cart where I thought I had seen it, my breath quickening. The cart was stocked with medical supplies, bandages, syringes, and an eerie array of tools. As I pushed through, my hands brushed against something cold and metallic, a stethoscope, left carelessly atop the supplies. I shuddered, the weight of its implications choking me. Then the laughter echoed again, so close now it was like an ice-cold breeze rushing down my spine. I spun around, only to confront nothing but empty space. Suddenly, I felt a tug on my scrubs from behind. I turned sharply, my heart in my throat, but it was just the medical cart, rattling back to a standstill. Panic clawed at my insides as I was struck by the idea that I was not alone in this room. Someone or something was playing a game with me. "Show yourself!" I shouted, swallowing my fear. "Who are you?" For a moment there was silence. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a flash of movement again. A pale hand peeked out from behind the carts, gripping the edge tightly. My breath caught as I leaned in closer, desperate to see. Just as I was about to reach for the hand, a loud crash echoed from farther down the corridor, the sound vibrating through the walls and breaking whatever spell had lingered over me. My heart hammered loudly in my ears, and instinct kicked in. I shot back from the carts and turned toward the source of the noise. There was no time to think. I had two choices: find the child or flee into the darkened depths of the hospital. But the urgency of the moment ignited something inside me. I dashed towards the noise, ready to uncover what lay in wait. As I moved, I heard the whisper once more, "Help me." And just beyond that, an unmistakable sound. A chilling, guttural growl rose from the shadows, echoing through the corridor. The presence around me was becoming more tangible, and I knew then that I was right on the brink of a terrifying confrontation. I sprinted down the corridor, every footfall echoing off the sterile walls. The whisper grew fainter, the playful giggle morphing into something sinister. I tried to push it out of my mind, keeping my focus on the growl reverberating through the hospital. As I rounded the corner, I skidded to a stop. There, sprawled across the floor, was a hospital bed, overturned and broken. Medical equipment lay scattered, like discarded toys. My heart raced. Something had gone terribly wrong here. "Is anyone there?" I called, my voice trembling. The shadows seemed to fold in on themselves, closing tight around me. No response came except the relentless hush of the hospital, cold and hollow. I stepped closer to the bed, my eyes scanning for signs of life. Suddenly, another crash resounded down the hall, louder this time, a cacophony of metal and betrayal. I froze, stomach knotting as dread threatened to pull me under. "You shouldn't be here," a voice hissed from the darkness. I spun around, feeling heat creeping up my spine. The voice was familiar, yet drenched in malice. It sent a chill through me. "You need to leave." "Who are you?" I shouted, my courage warring with the instinct to flee. "What do you want?" "Help me," came the response, softer now, gliding through the air like smoke. Panic gripped me. This voice, the same one I heard earlier, was taunting and beckoning all at once. The echoes reverberated in my mind, colliding with my thoughts. I glanced up the corridor just in time to catch a glimpse of movement. A shadow darted across the fluorescent lights. I hesitated, pulse racing, battling between the impulse to run and the need to pursue. Should I follow or retreat? The decision was made for me. The growl deepened, almost rumbling through the floor beneath my feet. I whirled around, and there, standing at the end of the hallway, was a shape. It was large and indistinct, shrouded in darkness. My throat went dry. "Who are you?" I asked again, but my voice broke. The figure moved, stepping into the flickering light. I could barely grasp what I was looking at. A monstrous form, almost human but twisted, like something caught between worlds. Then I noticed something strange. Attached to this creature's wrist was a small, delicate bracelet. The same one worn by the child I thought I saw. The realization hit me like a punch in the gut. This was no game. This was a hunt. I turned to run, but the grip of panic anchored me in place. I had to move. I darted down another corridor, desperate to escape its gaze. Just as I rounded a corner, lights flickered violently, threatening to plunge me into darkness. And then, everything went dark. My breath caught, and I stumbled, hands flailing as I tried to regain my balance. In the inky blackness, I heard the unmistakable sound of soft laughter. It echoed like a mocking promise, promising I was not alone. "Help me," the voice whimpered once more, but now it was clear that it didn't come from the shadows. It came from right behind me. I whipped around, adrenaline pumping. But nothing was there. The darkness swallowed the air, a thick wall that pressed in on me. I couldn't let fear overtake me. I had to think. "Where are you?" I shouted, my voice breaking the silence. I stepped back, bracing myself against the cold wall. It felt solid, but hollow, like a whisper trapped inside. The soft laughter faded, leaving behind an echo that twirled through my mind. The air felt heavier, charged, as if something was stalking me in the shadows, studying my every move. I pulled my phone from my pocket, praying for light. The screen flickered to life, pale and weak. With a trembling finger, I switched on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a narrow stretch of the corridor. I scanned the area. Empty. Then something caught my eye. A door at the far end was slightly ajar, light spilling through the gap like a beacon. My heart raced. Should I run toward it or stay in the safety of darkness? I chose to move forward, muscles tight with tension. Each step felt like a risk, but I couldn't stay in this desolate space. As I approached the door, I heard it again, the soft whimper that propelled me into motion. "Please, help me." I pushed the door open wider and it creaked in protest. The room was drenched in a pale azure light, strange and inviting. I wasn't prepared for what I found inside. A hospital room, but it was different. Furniture draped in white sheets, instruments lined up as if for a ritual. In the center stood a figure slumped over a bed, hidden beneath a shroud. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. "Are you okay?" I called hesitantly. Fear prickled my skin. The figure didn't move. I stepped closer. The light from my phone flickered, causing shadows to dance across the walls. I could see the figure more clearly now, an outline of a child, motionless, a few feet away. "Hey!" I yelled. "Are you all right?" But there was no answer. Just silence. Panic gnawed at my insides. I reached out, hesitating before touching the edge of the sheet. I couldn't bring myself to pull it back. The dread of what lay beneath paralyzed me. Then, in the stillness, everything shifted. The door slammed shut behind me, trapping the sounds of the hospital outside. I jumped, heart racing even faster now. I spun around, but the darkness cast me in shadow once more. "I can't stay here," I whispered to myself. I needed to get out, but the way back was blocked. I turned to the bed, more determined than ever. "Please wake up," I urged softly. I reached for the fabric and suddenly, the figure shot up, eyes wide and staring deep into mine. That's when I saw it. A flicker of recognition in those eyes. It was a child. Confusion and fear mixed in my chest. "Help me," it said again. But this time the voice was different. It was layered, almost replayed, echoing like a broken record. I froze, the tension in the air thickening like fog. The child's eyes bore into me, filled with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. I blinked, trying to gauge if this was a hallucination, but the voice echoed again, repeating, "Help me. What do you need?" I managed to stammer, my throat dry. The figure leaned forward, the shroud slipping slightly. I noticed something glimmering beneath it. Metal, perhaps? A knife? My heart thudded painfully. Then, almost as if sensing my fear, the child recoiled, pressing back against the bed. "They come when it's dark. They want me," it whispered, its voice quaking. Something cold twisted in my gut. I didn't know who or what the they were, but instinct told me they were not benign. I wanted to reach out to reassure this child, but I was too afraid of what that might mean. "Who's coming?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The child's gaze darted towards the shadowy corners of the room. "Listen," it said, and I felt an icy grip settle over me. "If the lights go out, you won't see them coming." The light from my phone flickered again, struggling to cope with what felt like unseen pressure in the room. I pointed the beam toward the corners, hoping to chase away whatever fears loomed in the dark. "Stay with me," I said more firmly, trying to convince myself as much as the child. The figure nodded, but then fixed its gaze towards the door. "You should leave," it said, a note of urgency creeping into its tone. "Before they find you." The lights blinked once, twice, and then without warning my phone went dark. The silence grew oppressive, swallowing the faint sounds of the world outside. Panic surged in my chest, tightening my throat. "No, come on!" I shouted, smacking the phone in desperation, but it remained lifeless. Suddenly I heard it, a low rumble like thunder rolling in from far away. Shadows crept closer, blending against the walls. I staggered back, my mind racing. The door was my only avenue of escape but led to the unknown. A soft giggle echoed, filling the space like a taunt. "They're here," the child whispered, eyes wide with a mix of fear and resignation. I needed to act. I ducked towards the door, fumbling desperately with the handle. It wouldn't budge. I pressed my shoulder against it and shoved, adrenaline fueling my every move. "Let me out." The giggle morphed into a cacophony of laughter, a haunting chorus that surrounded me. Then, a faint glow began to seep through the cracks of the door, illuminating just enough to reveal shifting shadows flitting across the walls. I took a deep breath. I couldn't let them in. I had to find a way out. With a final, frantic push, I felt the door give slightly. The laughter turned into a wail, piercing through the fog of fear. I pulled the door open, stumbling into the corridor, and the light poured over me, a stark contrast to the growing darkness behind me. But before I could really breathe, I turned back, and that's when I saw it. Faces pressed against the glass of the room, distorted and twisted from the outside, staring hungrily. I gasped and scrambled away, knowing I wouldn't be safe until I got far, far away. I raced down the corridor, my breath coming in quick, ragged gasps. The flickering fluorescent lights above cast shadows that danced around me, adding to my urgency. I needed to get away from that room, away from whatever had been lurking there. As I dashed past the nurse's station, I nearly collided with a nurse pushing a cart. She looked at me in surprise. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern etching lines across her forehead. "Something is in room 305, I blurted, heart pounding. "You have to help." Before I could finish my sentence, the lights blinked again, this time plunging the area into darkness for a brief moment. I felt a wave of dread sweep through me. "What's happening?" I whispered, panic creeping back in. The nurse's face lost its color. "Not again," she said, her voice trembling. "The outages have been getting worse." "What do you mean?" I pressed, desperation clawing at my throat. She hesitated, her eyes darting down the hall. "We can't stay in the dark. It's not safe." Then she grabbed my wrist and pulled me towards the break room. "We could stay there until the lights come back." I followed her, feeling an odd mix of disbelief and fear. My thoughts raced. I wanted to know more about what had happened in that room. "We need to check on the child," I insisted. The nurse shook her head. "We can't. If the lights go out again..." She trailed off, leaving the implication hanging in the air like smoke. We entered the break room, and the door clicked shut behind us. The room was dimly lit, the hard plastic chairs and table casting long shadows. I felt a rush of frustration. I was being pulled away from something I didn't understand, yet couldn't escape. "We cannot just hide out." Before I could argue further, I heard it, a soft tapping noise. The sound came from the kitchen area of the break room, almost rhythmic, like fingers drumming against the counter. I exchanged worried glances with the nurse. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her face pale. "Yeah," I said, every instinct telling me to move away from the source of the noise. "What is it?" Then, with a dreadful creaking sound, the door to the kitchen swung open slowly. My heart dropped. I squinted into the darkness. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaky. No answer, just more tapping. Then I caught a glimpse of something, a figure lurking in the shadows. It was the same kind of outline I had seen in room 305. My blood turned to ice. The resemblance was heart-stopping. "That's it," I whispered. "It's the child." The nurse's eyes widened and she stepped back instinctively. "We need to get out of here now," she urged. But before we could react, the lights above us flickered out, leaving us in suffocating darkness. I clutched the nurse's arm, both of us breathing hard, fear coursing through our veins. Then I heard a voice, soft, childlike, but impossibly near. "Help me!" Suddenly the door burst open, the outline more defined, more threatening. I felt a surge of adrenaline kick in. I had to survive. But just as I was about to flee, the faint light returned for a moment, illuminating the figure before it plunged us back into darkness. In that brief flash, I realized the chilling truth. What I had encountered wasn't just a shadow. It wanted something from me. As reality slipped into chaos, I knew I had to make my next move. I slammed myself back against the cold, sterile wall of the break room, arms raised protectively. The child's voice reverberated in my mind, mingling with the nurse's panicked breaths. "Help me." It pierced through the darkness like a haunting melody that wouldn't let me go. The lights flickered again, but not for long. "We need to move," I urged, adrenaline surging. "We can't just stay here." But as I turned to the door, something jolted me still. The tapping returned, and a low, guttural growl mixed with the child's imploring voice. The air felt charged, taut, and I knew whatever waited beyond was ready. "Wait," the nurse's voice trembled as she stood frozen, her wide eyes darting around the room. "What if it's dangerous?" "I don't think we have a choice," I shouted back, my heart racing. "We lose our chance if we stay. We have to go now." The lights flickered once more, throwing strange shadows across the walls. As if on cue, the growl deepened and echoed through the room, mingling with the child's cries. It made my insides churn. I knew the child was behind it somehow. But what was it really? With a sudden rush of courage, I slammed open the door and shot out into the corridor. "Come on!" I yelled, hardly glancing back to see if the nurse followed. The air was electric with fear as I dashed past the overturned bed and detritus of medical supplies. Each desperate step felt like a countdown, a race against whatever pursued us. The movements in the shadows skittered closer, nudging me forward. We rounded another corner and my instincts kicked in. "Room 3B!" I shouted, the memory of Mr. Jenkins flooding my thoughts. Maybe he was our key. The nurse stumbled behind me, words caught in her throat as the energy around us shifted. "What's happening?" she gasped out. "No time to explain," I panted. "Just trust me." We reached the door to 3B. I swung it open without hesitation. The room was dim but flooded with the scent of antiseptic. My eyes landed on the empty bed, the monitors echoing a hollow beep that resonated like a heartbeat. Mr. Jenkins must be sleeping, but the shadows looming outside felt all too present. "Mr. Jenkins," I called, but there was no answer. Suddenly, from behind, the growls rose, filling the narrow corridor like a raging wind. The tapping crescendoed, and I felt my heart pound louder against my ribcage. "Help me!" The voice skittered from the darkness, echoing like a ghostly chant. With every syllable it slithered deeper into my mind. "We need to find him," I yelled. "We can't stay here." Without waiting for the nurse, I turned back into the hall just as the flickering lights cascaded into darkness once more. And in that instant the shadow became tangible, and the figures emerged, grotesque yet desperate, watching, waiting. I grasped onto the pendant hanging around my neck, the warmth it carried somehow grounding me. "Please," I whispered, holding it forward as if it could shield me from the horrors around. Light erupted, illuminating the corridor with a warm glow that pushed back the shadows. But the light was fleeting. The darkness clawed back and the whispers grew louder. "You can't escape." Desperate, I spun to find the nurse. "Stay with me." But when I turned, the shadows were closing in. I felt the cold rush past my skin, freezing everything in its path. "Help me." The child's voice came again from behind me, pleading, desperate, a thin thread through the encroaching chaos. Now it resonated with an urgency that burned deep. The nurse stood still, frozen in fear, eyes wide, reflecting the terror that surrounded us. "We can't—" "Now!" I nearly screamed, cutting her off. Without thinking, I seized her arm and pulled her down the hall, each echoing footfall drowned by the din of darkness threatening to swallow us whole. "Where are we going?" she shouted as we pushed through the growing dread. "Wherever we lead ourselves. Away from here," I replied, each word a shaky slice of defiance. The growl turned into a roar, a tempest of shadows reaching for us. Suddenly, around another corner, the emergency exit loomed. A chance, a way out. I yanked at the door handle, praying it would give way. "Please!" I shouted, using every ounce of strength I had to wrench it open. To my relief, it swung wide, leading into an empty stairwell. I rushed inside, pulling the nurse along. I could still hear the chaos behind us as the shadows lunged, desperate for their prey. "Go, go, go!" I urged, bounding down the stairs, heart racing. We scrambled over cracked steps, desperate to lose the suffocating weight of the dark behind us. But as we reached the ground floor, everything shifted again. The hallways blurred, lights flickered ominously above, and I heard the whispers morph back into laughter, echoing menacingly, pushing in on us. My gut twisted, instinct screaming this wasn't over. We might have evaded the worst, but the threat still lingered unseen. As we burst through the lobby doors into the cool night air, I turned back to the hospital, its looming structure casting shadows that danced like phantoms. The night was eerily still, and my heart beat with a deep sense of having escaped, but not having won. I glanced at the pendant swinging gently around my neck, its warmth fading. It didn't answer the questions swirling in my mind. What was real? What had I encountered? I looked to the nurse beside me, her face a mirror of my own uncertainty. "Did we really get away?" I whispered, the weight of our experiences pressing down like lead. And as we stood in that quiet moment, the weight of the night heavy in the air, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows wouldn't stay confined to the hospital walls. Whatever lingered there was still lurking, waiting for the next moment to reach out. And even as I resolved to leave it all behind, a single thought echoed in my mind. "Help me." The words had faded, but their essence, an unanswered call, remained, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. It felt like the end. But in truth, it might just be the beginning.